Hi, I'm Jeanne Liedtka. I'm a faculty member here at the Darden Graduate School of Business Administration at the University of Virginia, and I am very pleased to give you an overview of my article entitled Linking Design Thinking to Innovation Outcomes, the Role of Cognitive Bias Reduction. Despite the overwhelming popularity these days of design thinking as a concept, it has had surprisingly little linkages built between the popular views of design thinking and a wealth of academic literature on organizational and individual decision making. My aim in writing this article was to link design thinking practices and tools to a set of well-researched work in the area of limitations and cognitive bias. And so let me talk a little bit about what the paper contains. I start talking about what is design thinking. Of course, there's as many definitions of design thinking as there are consultants and academics writing about it. Here at Darden, we've taken the view that design thinking as we think of it is a systematic approach to problem solving. So it's merely another approach to problem solving that we can teach to managers to add to their toolkit. It is, however, a unique approach in that it's characterized by three different characteristics. One is that it's human-centered. The process begins by immersing ourselves in the experience of the actual human being that we're trying to design for. Secondly, it's possibility-focused. It's constantly looking at the tension between what is possible, the existing constraints in the environment, and the uncertainties that we can't control. What matters for design thinking, however, is that we start in the possibility space and then layer in constraints and uncertainties. And finally, the third characteristic is that it is hypothesis-driven, so it's inherently meant to be iterative. It uses an experimental approach to test early solutions with the idea that this is a process of learning and helping us move to more advanced solutions. In design thinking, we don't expect to get it right the first time. So in this article, I lay out the idea of design thinking around which there is a significant degree of agreement in terms of the process, essentially three stages: need finding, ideation, experimentation. In support of those stages, there are again a well-accepted set of tools, including things like visualization, ethnographic research, prototyping, co-creation, field experiments, assumption testing, and various approaches to collaborative sense-making. Now, none of these tools are unique to design thinking. All of them have existed in some fashion or another previously. What's unique about design thinking is the way in which it integrates these tools into an end-to-end problem-solving process. Now, let's turn to the cognitive bias literature. In the paper, I lay out a common set of very well-researched cognitive biases and look at their implications for idea generation and testing. Many of these, such as the hypothesis confirmation bias, are very familiar to us all. Others, like the egocentric empathy gap bias, less well known, but in product creation, extremely damaging to our ability to bring a product to market that customers, rather than those of us who create it, really want. As a next step in the paper, I take those biases and sort them into three different categories of bias to better facilitate the ability to link them to design thinking process and tools. The first category is biases relating to decision makers who really can't escape their own worldview. So there's a projection bias in which we project our past onto the future. There's, as I said, the egocentric empathy gap in which we project our personal preferences onto others. And then finally, there's a hot-cold gap where we project our current emotional state onto others. A second category of bias relates to users rather than decision makers' inability to accurately describe or evaluate their own needs and preferences. In design thinking, a lot of researchers refer to this as the say-do gap, but there is a wealth of documentation in a variety of literatures demonstrating that unfortunately, as human beings, we're very bad at being able to articulate what we need. The third category of biases relate to hypothesis testing, and these have to do with decision makers' flaws in actually designing and executing experiments. So we have well-known biases like our inability to see disconfirming data, a tendency towards over-optimism, getting too attached to early solutions, or too attached to solutions that are easy to imagine, giving a preference for less creative solutions in the process. So having taken these three categories of bias, we can then relate these to what's going on in the design thinking process. So for example, in category 1, where we have a set of biases that are a result of our inability to incorporate the worldview of others into our decision making, we can talk in the need-finding stage of design thinking, where we have the emphasis on a set of ethnographic tools like journey mapping or job to be done analysis, which very explicitly place the decision maker in the lived experience of the person that we're trying to design for. As we move on, we have various types of visualization tools like storytelling and metaphor, which improve our ability to imagine the experiences of others. And then finally, because so much innovation work is done in teams, there's a variety of collaborative sense-making tools for insight generation, collaborative ideation, and even experimentation that design thinking brings to the table. As I conclude the paper, I look at a variety of design thinking tools and that same group of hypotheses, biases that we've talked about, and then look at which particular tools address which particular biases. So my aim in this paper is to demonstrate that although design thinking may be generally dismissed as a fad of the moment, in fact, there's decades of research in this one particular area of cognitive bias, but also in other fields, I believe, like team learning, that demonstrate that what design thinking really is doing is helping us to operationalize a set of practices that help us to guard against some very well accepted and recognized cognitive biases. If you're interested in learning more about design thinking, I'd encourage you to join our community at Design at Darden, where we've created a website in which those seeking to teach design thinking and learn more about it can share materials. I'd also encourage you to look into our specialization and earn a Darden certificate in design thinking and innovation, where we're offering 4 different classes, each one focused on equipping you with the tools to implement this idea of design thinking to have an impact in your very own organization. Well, I hope that this brief summary has piqued your interest and will cause you to read the paper and join us at Darden for some of the exciting activities we've got going on.